60% of the artists that we looked at didn't have any kind of abandoned cart email sequences. Do you know how much money is left on the table by not having a simple email sequence that when someone leaves their cart behind, you encourage them to finish their purchase?
Don't even worry about it. I got the data. It's 15%. 15%, you have 100 people who leave their cart and you send email to all of them, 15% of them will buy.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 284, and we've been teasing this one for a few weeks now, probably a couple months now, actually, and I'm really excited. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is your host, Circa. Cirque, what's up, dude? How pumped are you?
Soup's pumped, friend. This is going to be a good one.
I'm so pumped to unveil today's topic, this episode. Like I said, we've been teasing this to you guys for a few weeks now, so let's just uncover it and dive right in. Back at the beginning of the second quarter of this year, we were doing a lot of work at IndieX, researching artists in the wild. And in particular, we were doing some deep dive research into some of the artists on the Billboard Hot 100 chart to see just what was going on in their marketing and kind of doing some auditing, a little bit of learning to bring to the show and to bring to our customers and our clients at IndieX and in the whole entrepreneur community, kind of what's going on out there in the wild, what they could be doing to outmarket some of these mammoth artists that are out there in the wild, and also hopefully educate you guys a little bit on the things that you could be doing better. And maybe if you need some help, you might consider working with us to get the help you need. So I'm really excited to bring to this episode some of the lessons learned from that research round and kind of loop you guys in on what it was that we were doing and why and some of the things that we found out. So I'm pumped. Cirque, I hope you're ready to grill me.
Dude, Soup's ready. You know this is one of my favorite things to do.
Grill me?
No, just talk shit about industry marketing.
Well, I'm hoping that it was definitely a really insightful process for me to go through because it allowed me to take the outsider view from both a fan perspective and also a nerdy marketer perspective to look at the numbers and write down the stats of, what was going on kind of across this whole list of artists that we were looking at. Like I said, this was going on around the beginning through a good chunk of the second quarter of this year. And the process was a ton of fun to do. It was very time intensive. My email inbox is constantly filled up now with out now emails about music from artists who probably don't need to be sending out now emails, but we can get into that a little bit more as we dive in. So tell me what you want to know, Cirque. What's a good place to start?
Yeah, well, let's start at the beginning. Why did you do this? How did that start?
Yeah, great question. So the genesis of this whole project came from two places. One, we're always looking to learn and see, what are our blind spots as a marketing company in the music industry? What might be going on that we might be missing? Because we don't like to get stuck in our ways. We don't like to, have too much dogma going on. And we've got processes and SOPs and, campaigns that we pull from that we know work really well. Proven offers, proven ad types, all sorts of stuff. Copy. We have a whole swipe file at our agency that we use across the team to help us get inspiration based on things that we've done in the past and help us to iterate on things in the future. But that inspiration also comes from outside as well. We often look to see, is there something we might be missing? Is there something cool going on that we're not paying attention to? We don't ever want to be caught, kind of showing our ass and having something that we don't know.
Not me. I love showing my butt.
Yeah, same. No, we love to kind of be on the pulse of what's going on to be able to have an intelligent conversation about it and say, yes, we think this is good. No, we think this probably doesn't work. Are there things we should be testing? This is what keeps us kind of on our toes and learning. So that was point number one of why we dove into this research project. And the other point, number two, transparently, was to be able to have this conversation and to be able to bring to the table the sort of things that we see not happening in the wider music industry amongst artists that really could be picking up a lot of revenue that's really just being left on the table, falling off the table, on the ground, burning in a fire, whatever you want to call it. We really wanted to be able to have a transparent conversation about what we're seeing out there and where we think a lot of the missed opportunities are for some of these massive, massive artists. So those were really the two reasons that we wanted to dive into this little research project and figure out what's going on out there.
So what was your research criteria? Why were artists included? And then what was your method of study?
Yeah, great question. So we immediately just kind of navigated towards looking at the Billboard Hot 100 chart because we wanted to look for artists that were both, large artists, people with a lot of name recognition in most cases, and also people that were trending at the time that we were doing research. So there wasn't, a whole lot of legacy going on. There wasn't one-off like pop-ups around holidays, for example. This was stuff that was kind of happening in the moment. And it also wasn't incredibly overwhelming either. It wasn't an overwhelming data set because it was a lot of work to do. So that was the main criteria of where we started. We wanted to start with these artists on this chart and keep it constricted to that. So that was kind of the main bucket of artists and bands that we looked at. And then the process by which we conducted this research was painstaking. No. It was a lot of fun, but it went over the course of around 8 weeks was the process of actually going in, and I'll just, kind of run down what we were doing. We were going in, we were looking at artists' websites, we were pulling all of their socials, we were looking at their website and analyzing what their opportunities for fans to opt onto their email list or their text list were, what those looked like, whether there were offers in place. We also looked at each and every artist's ads that they were currently running on Facebook and Instagram to see what they were doing, if anything. And then we were opting into all of their email lists, looking to see what was happening from an automation perspective as soon as we signed up. We were going to their stores, looking to see if they had marketing tracking pixels installed. Facebook pixels primarily was what we were looking for. We were looking for how well stocked their store was, what was going on in terms of store infrastructure, things like upsells, order bumps. We were looking for inventory, how well stocked the store was, and also we were looking to see what was happening from an e-commerce infrastructure point of view in terms of things like abandoned cart advertising or abandoned cart email marketing. All of that sort of stuff was what we were looking into. And then finally, what we were digging into was once we were signed up for someone's list, we were patiently waiting to see what kind of sales activity was going on for these artists. So we were looking to see, are they running any sales promos? What's going on once we get onto their list? Like I said, this took place over the course of basically the entire second quarter once we were all signed up and went through the whole process of opting in and analyzing. We kept this rolling, and a major retail holiday happened over the research period, which was Memorial Day. And that was very interesting to dive into as well, because we really got to see, okay, what's being pulled out from a sales perspective just in general during this time? Are there any, sales promotions happening? But also what's happening at a time where you would reasonably expect a competent e-commerce operation to run a sale? What was going on? What kind of numbers could we see? And all that stuff. So all of this allowed us to look both from the perspective of, a marketer like myself and our team at what was going on with these artists, but also allowed us to take the eyes of a fan a little bit and see, okay, what would happen if I was a fan in this person's world? What would I be seeing? What would be put in front of me over the course of 3 months? What would be happening here? And it was really, really insightful. Some of the stuff that we saw and learned was interesting.
So maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, and I'll just try to list out what I think like a perfect score on this research round would be, right?
Yep.
We've got Facebook ads running for fan acquisition, email sign up, even sales.
Yes. Yep.
We've got Facebook pixels and Google Analytics installed on the website.
Yep.
We've got immediate engagement sequence leading people from opt-in to first purchase when you sign up for their email list.
Yep.
We've got offer bearing lead magnet sign up. So like when you get to their website, there's something cool that you can only get if you sign up for the email list, and it's made very obvious the second you get on that site.
Yep.
And then they're running regular sales promotions, especially at times when there's a good excuse to sell and everyone else is doing it.
Yep.
If you buy something, there is ascension sequences on the back end to not only make you dream come true purchase experience, but also to get you into another purchase down the line.
Yep.
And then there's cart abandonment retargeting for both email and ads.
Bingo.
And then they have a plethora of really exciting products, and they're available.
You checked all the boxes, man.
Okay.
Those are exactly all the research criteria points that I was looking at that would really wow me if an artist had all of them marked off.
All right. So would it be an easier question to ask if anyone didn't have all of that? Or would it be an easier question to ask and answer if anyone had any of that?
Many artists had some of these elements.
Did anyone just knock it out of the park?
No.
Was there anyone you were like, holy shit?
No one knocked it out of the park. There were a few artists, and we'll get into the specifics in a minute here. There were a few artists that had offers that made me, smile a little bit and nod. And there were a few artists that when I signed up to their email list, I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's a pretty dope introductory email. And I'm getting a few more over a course of a couple days, but it was pretty rare. It was pretty rare. So the results weren't exactly surprising to me because I'll be honest, I went into this research round a bit expecting to be disappointed, and that's okay. I've been in this game long enough to know what we're up against, but no one really knocked it out of the park. So that said, there's a lot to learn here, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do. I think if you're an artist out there or you manage an artist out there, and as we start to go through kind of what I'm going to call the 3 umbrellas, there's likely going to be things that you're going to hear that you could immediately jot down and be like, these are things that we need to work on. These are things that we need to do, especially if you're an artist that fits into the criteria of the ones that we were analyzing, where, they have large fan bases, where they've got name recognition, where they've got some sort of virality going on at this moment. There's just a ton of opportunity. So yeah, we can definitely get into the specifics of that. But I want to dive into one quick thing before we do, and that's just to kind of outline the 3 main things that we do at our agency, IndieX, and how these research criteria points and kind of the check marks that you mentioned, Cirque, how they all sort of fall into each other. And the 3 criteria, the 3 things, 3 main components that we focus on at IndieX when we work with artists are, number 1, sales, number 2, infrastructure, and number 3, fan to customer strategy. Those are the 3 main things, and pretty much all of these research checkpoints fit into one of those stages. And so we can kind of break them down in a second here, and I can give you guys what I think are some pretty interesting stats, and maybe you'll leave this episode with your mouth wide open being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you would miss so much low-hanging fruit, how so many of these numbers just skew in an unbelievable direction.
Of those 3 things you listed, I would imagine that the second 2 are downstream of sales. Like, you wouldn't really necessarily worry about those insofar as sales are like really strong, right?
100%. Yeah. In fact, when we work with artists at IndieX, especially artists that have large fan bases but don't have a strong e-commerce element, one of the first things that we're focused on literally within our first month is to try and get an infusion of e-commerce revenue happening for them. Because without that, like, the rest of the stuff is cool, but that's the incremental gains that start to happen once you get things really rolling.
And if infrastructure is there and there's a fan to artist strategy already, then like sales can happen. And if sales aren't happening, it's probably in those directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe we start with sales. I mean, some of the things that we were seeing here. So this isn't totally terrible. We'll start off with a positive one. 14% of the artists, of the ones that we studied, 14%, only 14% had either no store or a store with very few products. So in large part, most of the artists that we were looking at had an e-commerce store set up with a decently well-stocked product set, that looked exciting for a fan. It wasn't a terrible, like I wasn't terribly disappointed in the fact that like, oh my gosh, none of these people have stores.
Yeah, I mean, that's also off the top of my mind, like not usually the problem either.
No, no, definitely not. It's usually that a store is just underutilized, and that's what we'll get into now. Here, we'll start to crawl into things a little bit. What I noticed as we were researching the ads that these bands and artists were running was that only 20% of them were running ads for any kind of sales at all. Whether that be evergreen sales or a promotion going on at the time, only 20% were running ads for sales. That means the remaining 80% were either running no ads at all or ads for purely top of funnel.
So that's actually a surprise. 20% is pretty high in terms of, you're saying 20% were running ads that had a sale attached to it.
Yes, exactly.
That's encouraging. I guarantee you back when we started in 2017 that number would be lower.
I think you're right. I felt two ways about that, like on one hand, I was like, oh, okay, like I'm seeing a little bit more. I will say that of the people that were running sales ads, it was nothing mega impressive. The offers weren't great.
It's like being retargeted by Kohl's.
Yes.
It's like, this winter sweater looks warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of that. So that's actually a really good caveat to make, is that while there were 20% running ads for sales, the effectiveness of those ads definitely leaves question marks.
Who likes slippers?
Yeah. Exactly. Ariana Grande's new slipper set is here.
Yeah. Or like a carousel of products with like one line of copy. Yeah.
A lot of that for sure. But you're right. On the flip side, that is way more than what we would have seen 5 years ago. 100%. Now, this is where it gets dark. This is where it gets dark and the money starts to go away. So throughout this research period, 84% of the artists that we studied were not running sales promotions to their email subscriber list for any kind of sale at all during this 3-month promotional period. Of the 16% that were, none of those artists sent more than one email. And they had very, very little in ways of offer structure. There was very little exclusivity. There wasn't really an offer being made. There wasn't a whole lot of scarcity. There was no urgency. So the offers were not strong. And for the most part, in these, I hesitate to even call them sales promotions, there wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of actual communication. It was like one email and that was it. And then to top things off, to put the cherry on top of this very disgusting cake, for Memorial Day weekend, which was the big holiday, retail holiday that fell over this period of research, only 3 artists ran sales and only one of them sent more than one email for that sales promotion.
Whoa, these artists don't support the troops, dude.
Damn, dude. Cold.
They're not out here supporting the troops.
Stone cold killer.
Yeah.
If you're not selling over Memorial Day, you must not support the troops.
You must hate the troops.
Yeah, geez. But that was really, kind of telling, because just to give context, over Memorial Day, when we run sales promotions for our clients at the agency, usually we're sending a minimum of 3 emails, a minimum, to their list. And a lot of times it stretches on further than that. It's the first holiday going into the summer season. There's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of wins that you can pull out there.
So what is it? They did a study. It's from Influence by Robert Cialdini. They did a study where they had a line of people waiting for water, and someone was like, oh, I need to cut in line. And people would just be like, no. And then that was the control. And then in the tests, they had him say, I need to cut in line because I'm thirsty. And just by giving a because, they improved that rate by like 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So many more people were willing to let him cut in line just because he gave a reason. And that kind of ties back into having an excuse to sell. Like, any time when everyone else is selling, get in there, dude. Because it's like, no one's going to think this is weird. No one's going to question this sale at this time. And so you should be there. So it's a missed opportunity. How much revenue would you say out of like an agency client where we're doing everything right, how much revenue does a given sales holiday like represent out of the total annual?
My gosh, like
2 to 5% or something like that?
yeah, probably is about that much. It's high, and you can slate as many of them as you want into your promotional calendar, or as many as your ecosystem will support. You know, a lot of the work that we do early on with artists is figuring out what's the appropriate cadence. Once we run one, then let's, slate out your whole always on kind of marketing calendar and figure out how much can we sell to your fans? What do they want sold to them and when? And where do you need to build new offers and where do you need to load up with new products and how does that all fall in time with everything else that you're doing with new releases and tours and everything else that you might be doing in your world.
Were all the people who sent out on Memorial Day sending about a sale?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, specifically the Memorial Day piece that I mentioned, any of those they were promotional emails for sure.
And what was the quality of that sales offer? Was it like 10% off Memorial Day, go to our store, or was it like a specific offer or anything like that?
In the most cases, it was very low impact. Like you said, 10% off Memorial Day. A lot of times it was just like new merch, not even really much of an offer at all. Like, we have merch, not great.
It's Memorial Day. We got merch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Support the troops.
Yeah. All right. That's sad.
Yeah, not great.
Not great. And a big missed opportunity. Like, to all of the people we're talking about make plenty of money. That's not the problem, right? Like the problem is like doing more, doing better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it's like you have an opportunity to strike. You have a moment in the marketplace as a public figure. You have a brand, and you're just not capitalizing on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that said, does that close out kind of what you want to say about Memorial Day, or is there other stuff?
No, that primarily closes out what we have to say about sales. It doesn't get much more bleak than that. I'll transition into our next point by saying that, like, this is, with sales being such an important piece of the puzzle of what we do at IndieX, and really one of the biggest marketing levers that artists of this size can pull. The reason that this part of the research was so important to me to do was to illuminate, like, this is an area where you can be actively monetizing your fan base in a way that you don't typically have an opportunity to do in the online space otherwise. There's not really much of an opportunity to do that elsewhere,
Yeah.
You can monetize through touring and through merch at touring. You can monetize through your releases, and we've talked on the show recently about intellectual property based revenue streams. And that's a lot of where the sort of passive online, I mean, you could argue that it's active in that, like, you have to do some kind of promotion to make it happen. But for the most part, like, you're not actively making offers to fans that they want to take. It's passive in the way that fans consume. And so I wanted to lead with this to say, this is the biggest lever that you can pull for revenue. And to see on the Hot 100 chart just how little it's taken advantage of, there's a lot out there that you could do. There's a lot out there that you could do that would stand out. So to transition into talking about infrastructure, this is kind of the next key opportunity that we look at for artists when we work with them at IndieX. This has some interesting stuff. When we talk about infrastructure, right, we're talking about plumbing. This is a lot of the stuff that goes on from a technical backend in someone's online store, in someone's email marketing platform, in someone's text marketing platform, the way their website is laid out and set up, what it works to do to move fans through stages of relationship, through the fan customer journey. The buddy system is what we call it here. And that's what infrastructure is all about. A lot of times this plumbing work is where we dive in, after we've kind of tapped into an audience's monetization element for the first time.
Yeah, and to expand on that, like, infrastructure is mostly just things that you don't do every time. So, like, if you set up an automated email sequence so that when people sign up to your email list, they get content and value and then an offer for a first purchase, that can be plugged up to anywhere people sign up to your email list. It can be, you can modify the first email and make it for any offer you're making for sign up. So it's a piece of infrastructure and you really don't have to touch it because once you build it and you set it up, like it works. So that's infrastructure. There's also like having an ad account or having your, email marketing like hooked up to your website. These are all infrastructure points.
Right, exactly. The cool thing, I'm glad that you mentioned that. The cool thing about infrastructure in your music marketing and your music business is that oftentimes when you find something that works really well in the plumbing that you've set up, like you said, Cirque, you can then take the elements that work really well. Maybe that's a super attention grabbing subject line for your email. Maybe you've got an email that fires off when someone becomes a customer, when someone makes an order, and something about that subject line really catches their eye. If you've got that kind of thing, you can plug that in all over the place and iterate on it and make it different, slightly different. But all of a sudden, you've got a spark that you can then take into other places in your digital infrastructure. And I think that's what's really cool is you get to iterate on things and you don't have to think about doing them over and over and over again manually by yourself. A lot of times it's automation based.
Infrastructure can also be like a shipping provider, third-party logistics, someone who ships out your products for you.
Right.
Like, so it doesn't have to be digital, doesn't have to be intangible, but it's just stuff you don't have to do, more than once, twice in some cases.
Man, I wish we could have audited the physical shipping-based infrastructure of some of these artists.
Let's go buy all their fucking crap products. Let's go buy all their print-on-demand bullshit.
I would have just loved to max out my credit card on this research project and buy a whole bunch of junk.
Yeah, dude, let's give Printful a boatload of money, dude.
Yeah, would have been a blast. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
I'll jot that down for my Christmas wish list. Dear Santa, I want to buy all the products from all the artists on the Hot 100 chart.
I would like this rapidly dissolving t-shirt from Post Malone. Thank you.
Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is a rapidly dissolving t-shirt. But let's talk infrastructure. What I found when diving into the infrastructure of some of these artists was disheartening, to say the least, because it's easier and easier by the day to do these things. I'm going to kick it off with this. 60% of the artists that we looked at didn't have any kind of abandoned cart email sequences. Do you know how much money is left on the table by not having a simple email sequence that when someone leaves their cart behind, you encourage them to finish their purchase?
Don't even worry about it. I got the data. It's 15%.
Wild.
Yeah. 15%, you have 100 people who leave their cart and you send email to all of them, 15% of them will buy on average.
So right there, that means 60% of the artists that we studied were missing out on 15%. 15%. That's insane if you think about it, especially given the scale of a lot of these artists. If they're getting any orders to their store, which given the last section that we talked about, that might be up for debate, but they're missing out on revenue. 60% of them had no email marketing, retargeting at all, abandoned cart, email automations.
The biggest delta is kind of a hidden one because I can give you hard metrics for cart abandonment. What I can't give you hard metrics for is the loss from paralysis of choice. And I'm sure all of these artists you studied have this problem, which is like you go to their store and there's no help whatsoever in terms of what you should buy or what is a great opportunity or a great product. It's all like a la carte, figure it out yourself. And like, if you walked into a store that was like that and no salesperson, like there's salespeople in the back just like chilling and they don't even pay you any attention, like you'd leave. You would leave. And that's what most people do when they don't have clear directives. And a lot of times these artists are like sort of putting everything up and being like, go select what you want. And then wondering why their stores like aren't a big portion of their revenue,
It's so true, yeah. Offers and sales funnels in general really act as your digital salesperson. It takes someone from maybe wanting to buy something to having the desire to buy a very specific offer that you've made to them brings them to your store to make that purchase and doesn't leave them distracted with anything else unless you intentionally want to sell them multiple things in a sequential process.
Yeah. And it's like, there's no better buyer intent than like, think about the traveling salesperson or the cold calling salesperson, right? They would kill for the buyer intent of someone calling them or knocking on their door. And when you walk into a store at a mall or you visit an online store on a website, you are showing, hey, like, I would probably buy some shit if you help me out. You know, like is nothing clearer.
Safe to say here that throughout this research round, there were no artists that, ran a sales promotion for a dedicated offer to me that I saw. And
Right.
this is a sad fact. The only artists that probably didn't present their fans with the paradox of options or paralysis by options were the ones that had such a low stocked store that there were really only one or two things to choose from.
I mean, it's weird to say it. It's almost better.
Yeah.
It's almost better that like you can only buy 3 things and none of them are in the same category.
Yeah, for sure. Now, related to abandoned cart email sequences, another thing that I found in the infrastructure portion of this research that I thought was interesting and wanted to bring to the show today was none of these artists were running checkout retargeting ads. None of them.
Right.
At all. Which is wild. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Go to any reputable e-commerce company on the internet, and you're likely going to have at least some kind of checkout retargeting that's going on. You can spend just a little bit of money every single day and pick up missed sales like it's nobody's business.
Most people think business is like really hard, but in a lot of cases, once you've got a business up and running, like it's just doing the obvious shit. And I love Hormozy like says like, just go make a list of all the things that you could start by saying like, well, I know I should be doing this. Make a list of it and then order it by how high impact it would be if you did it, and then filter it by how much effort it takes. And this is one of those things where it's like, you're going to get more sales if you set up abandoned cart retargeting. Like you're going to, especially at that volume. It's like not a question. And then the amount of time it takes to set up that retargeting is like a day. So it's like 4 years, you are not doing this thing that takes a day that could have improved your sales rate all of the time you hadn't set it up. So, and like, I mean, artists don't know, like no artist is like, I know I should be doing that. Like their agency or their manager, like whoever's running their e-commerce, like is responsible for that. But it's just crazy. Like,
The wild thing to me about checkout retargeting ads is that the barrier for doing them and getting results is so low because most e-commerce companies don't even really get super creative with them. It's usually just
no, they're like, you were looking at shoes. Here's more shoes.
right, exactly. So the barrier is so low for you to be able to do that as an artist. If you got creative with it, it could go gangbusters, but you don't even need to. You just need to do the basic thing. But,
And you don't, I mean, none of these artists have volume problems in terms of site traffic.
oh no.
That's not why it wouldn't work. It would work. Very few things we can say, like, I know this will improve your sales. Like, that's easy one.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So that was definitely an interesting, alongside the missing revenue from email automation. And this is related, and I think an interesting sort of transition into just overall fan to customer strategy is that when signing up for an email list or a text list on these artists' websites, 75% of the artists that we studied had either no or a very inadequate welcome automation when you signed up for their email list, meaning they just sent you a generic like thanks for subscribing or you're signed up. Yeah, no shit. Like I just typed in my information. I know. There was another 10% of them that were actually using double opt-in, which was probably costing them subscribers. And you could argue about the, list quality through that, but like the double opt-in emails that you were getting were not.
No, well, you can argue on list quality if we're talking about a regular business.
Yeah.
To get on the list you're talking about, they went to the artist's website, which like who goes to websites anymore that aren't Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix? Like nobody goes to like independent proprietary websites. Like obviously they do, but it's just such a small portion of all web traffic that it's like not even worth talking about. So they went all the way to your website and they opted in. And what was the offer on the opt-in? Probably
Most of the times it was sign up for updates.
get updates. They fucking put in their email address and name to get updates. They're sure, dude. They know.
And then you ask them, like, you sure? You sure you want those
Yeah, dude.
updates?
Yeah, dude, they're committed.
Yeah. So 10% of those 75 that we talked about were using double opt-in. So not great.
73 out of 4.
The double opt-ins were never good. It was always confirm your subscription. Not great. Not great. Definitely wouldn't recommend doing that.
Do you have any data on what percent of those opt-ins were not for the artist proprietary lists, but rather like a label list or something like that?
I don't, because it was very mixed how often I would see label checkboxes versus the times that I would sign up and I would just start getting label emails.
Surprise! It's
Yeah.
the label.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, the data there is muddy because some of the time they would give me the courtesy of saying like, you want to sign up for RCA's email list while you're at it? And I'd be like, hell no, I don't. Definitely not. And other times I would just get like, here's Universal. Like,
Hey!
great. Thanks for showing up to my email inbox party.
That rocks.
Don't do that. Please don't do that. It's not good. But no, I don't have the number on that. But I will say, of the artists where there was some kind of autoresponder in place, 66% of them, it was just a general welcome email. Like I said, very, very generic. Thanks, you're in. You're here. None of the artists that we studied had any kind of multi-day introduction sequence that onboarded a new fan onto the email list, gave them free value, gave them free content, moved them towards a purchase.
Got them at all excited about
No, none of that. None of that happened at all.
So 0%.
0%. So from an infrastructure point of view, not great. But also from the third lever that we talked about, the fan to customer strategy level, not great as well. You can see there's a huge gap here of you've got the opportunity when someone signs up for your email list. One, very high intent, like you mentioned, Cirque, because if you're a fan of an artist and you're going to their website and then you're signing up for whatever it is that they're offering, which in this case was
It's updates.
yeah, which in this case, it was always updates and nothing specific. That's not true. There were a few sales-related offers. It was oftentimes like, get 15% off XYZ collection, which, you know...
Not terrible if you're like an e-commerce brand.
No, not terrible. I was pleased by that. It was good enough for me, given the rest of the nonsense that was out there.
The bar has been set so low that...
Yeah.
Basically a godsend.
Every day I did this, I was just prepared to be disappointed. It was a dark, dark time in my life. No, but to transition kind of into the fan to customer strategy, this sign up portion, this period of time when a fan first signs up and the first few days after that, you've got a big opportunity to onboard them into an experience, into getting used to hearing from you. And if you don't take that opportunity, you've probably got a cold email list. And that's often what we see when we onboard artists that do have big email lists, but have really no infrastructure in place. A lot of times it's a dead cold list that we got to do a lot of work to get it hot, like cleaned up, nice and clean, squeaky clean, people that are going to open, people that are going to engage. And that's a lot of the work that we do when it comes to, shoring up infrastructure. But now we can kind of get into the fan to customer strategy, the buddy system building stuff. And I think there's a lot to talk about here. First of which being just in general, and this was an interesting one, 50% of the artists that we studied in this period of time weren't running any ads on Facebook or Instagram at all, which was very strange to me because I was expecting pretty much 100% at least to be doing top of funnel work. Video ads saying out now was really what I was expecting. But the fact that 50% weren't running anything at all was curious to me. And like I said, 20% then of that small segment that were, or that half segment that were running ads for sales.
Yeah, well, it's like in the heyday of Facebook ads, like when CPMs were just insanely cheap, no one in the industry was running ads. And then like around 2017 to 2019, maybe 2020, labels, you started to see like major artists having the Out Now ad, where it's like, oh, you got a single coming out? Run some Facebook ads and tell people the single's out now.
Yeah.
That was their best strategy. And when that didn't work for them, because obviously it didn't work, they seem to have thrown up their hands. So I'm actually not surprised that much that like labels aren't pouring into paid media, especially social paid media. Like,
You mean your Out Now copy and ad creative doesn't work and you want to give up? Shock.
when your best idea for 3 years is Out Now, the Pookie remix by Lil Pump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did a whole episode on this a while back. I'll make sure we link to it in the show notes that was talking about like the big mistakes that major artists make when it comes to advertising. And that was being stuck on top of funnel, which, you know, transparently, that was a lot of what I was seeing of the artists that were doing advertising. It was a lot of top of funnel and not very good top of funnel at that. But that's a whole nother conversation. 50% of artists weren't running any ads at all. Of the ones that were, we talked about the ones that were doing sales. There was only one artist doing anything for lead generation. And actually, it was a very simple, like sign up for updates ad. Not great.
That's an offer you want to get some exposure on that offer.
Yeah, really great. Really firm, solid, something that people would want to sign up for.
Yeah.
But not a great offer and not a great showing of people who know how to get leads with advertising. And I bring this up from the fan to customer strategic point of view because you can do so much damage by running ads to a really great lead magnet or a bribe or a permission offer, whatever you want to call it, to get people onto your list for something for free and then nurture them towards becoming a customer. It's kind of the bridge between fans who just hang out and listen to your music and maybe engage with your content online and people who actually want to buy from you and be a customer and drive revenue into your business. This is the bridge, and so few people take advantage of it.
In the world of digital marketing and sales, there are few easier slam dunk opportunities than retargeting a Billboard Hot 100 artist's own fan base and followership with a dedicated sales offer. If I had like a client who is Hot 100 right now and, you know, big following on social, and they were like, we want to get some email subscribers, I'd be like, that's very awesome that you want that. And that's cool. But all we're going to do right now is just take any item you have on your store and offer it to your existing fans for purchase. Like, that's it. Because that's going to make you all the money you need to pay me forever. Like,
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And so often, a lot of times when we work with a new artist where, you know, a revenue focus is the thing that we're getting into really and pushing towards, you know, flexing the e-commerce muscles for the first time, dusting off the rust. A lot of times what we look to do is, and we've talked about this on the show before, is get a flood of email list subscribers organically very quick and then make them an offer. And that taps into the fact whether you have a customer list or not, you've got people that you can communicate with and you can rapidly turn them into a customer. So that's something that we focus on a lot at IndieX, especially in the earlier stages of, you know, trying to generate revenue quickly. Now, related to email marketing and email list building and advertising is what was going on artists' websites for getting subscribers and getting people onto their list, whether they're text or email list subscribers. And this is interesting and kind of the last fan to customer strategy talking point that I'll bring to the table today. And what that was only 26% of the artists that we studied had any kind of immediately apparent email sign up on their website. It was either in a pop-up format or in the above the fold section, which is the section of your website where it's the first thing you see and it's the section that you don't have to scroll to get to. Typically, that's a really good place to put an email list sign up or an offer of any kind. It's the prime real estate of your website. 26% were the only ones who had something that was apparent in that way. And only 6% of the artists that we studied had an actual offer to get people to sign up. And that primarily consisted of, like I said, at usually 10 to 15% off something in the store or your first order or whatever that might be. Something like that was the primary offer that we were seeing. Everything else, the remainder, had either suboptimal placement, like it was way at the bottom in a tiny little pixel box that said like subscribe maybe, or it was in their navigation that said like email.
From Universal Records?
Yeah. Subscribe, Universal. 46% had really suboptimal placement and 28% had none at all. And really none of them had an offer except for asking fans to subscribe or get updates. Not really great. We've talked about that kind of at length here. But again, a huge missed opportunity from a fan to lead to customer strategic point of view. It's just a missed opportunity sort of across the board, both from an infrastructure standpoint and from a strategy standpoint.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because so many artists, like if you think about it, like what we're talking about in this cohort is there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of hard work involved. Like, don't get me wrong. These people, when it comes to the arena of putting out content, making songs that have a mass appeal and image, these people are second to none. No one's outworking them. You know what I mean? And all of the work in this part of the industry goes towards that. It goes towards maximizing top of funnel, maximizing exposure, and creating a highly desirable sound and image. And I would say 99.999% of artists, including myself, like we're not it. They're it. We're not it. We can't afford the kinds of egregious mistakes that they've made in this study. You know, like I'm not here to say that like the things that they have achieved are not incredible, because they are. Like they are a very slim minority of all artists who ever try in that way. And you could just imagine what it would be like if they just did all the basic things that you know a business should do in addition to being it. You know, the rest of us, in order to make a feasible income that's long term, we have to be perfect in all these ways of business. And this is just sort of like table scraps in terms of like what they're thinking about. And I think largely they don't realize the opportunity that exists within it. I don't think the average artist is out there thinking like, well, I could have like, you know, I could add 7 figures to my annual revenue by just like ticking all these boxes.
Yeah. And the reality is that you can. You know, these 3 levers that we talked about, the 3 things that we focus on the most at IndieX, these research points really outlined what's going on out there in the wild and what you can do with just some simple movements and some simple strategies and an always on sort of digital strategy that works to sell around the calendar, regardless of what you're doing from a, you know, release standpoint, regardless of how often you're releasing new music or albums or EPs or movies or whatever creative thing you do. Pulling on these levers, getting them in place and doing it consistently, or working with talented people who do, it really does open up the opportunity for additional 6 or 7 figures in revenue, depending on how hard you really want to work it and how much you want to innovate and get creative with it. There's so much that you can do. And these research points really prove to me that it doesn't take much to outmarket what else is going on out there, what else is happening with, you know, the biggest names in music right now. And so if you're an artist that has a fan base that looks similar to what some of these artists that we saw on the charts are, or you're a manager that works with those types of artists, I'd encourage you to consider these 3 points and some of these research elements and just look at these numbers from a dollars and cents standpoint and think like, okay, like even if I make an additional, let's start the lowest barrier. Like even if I make an additional $100,000 this year from doing these things, would that mean something to you, you know?
Yeah.
Because once you kind of crack that, then it just starts to roll, you know, and then you can do more and more and more of it. The wins that we've seen people pull off doing this stuff well, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's just money left. It's truly money left on the table. You know, we've talked about this plenty on the show, but I think bringing this deep dive sort of research that was really fun to do, enlightening, painful at times, but a lot of fun getting to kind of sneak under the hood of what some of these artists were doing, really illuminated it even further for me.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, if you're an artist out there and you've got a label and like they're taking your subscribers and emailing them, like that's illegal. Okay. I don't know if you know, like this in our world, digital marketing, like there's this thing called affiliates, and affiliates, they send you customers from their own audience, and it's literally illegal for you to then try to sell those customers or take them because they came from this other person's audience and like they ushered them in the door. You can't communicate with them outside of that. And that's effectively what these labels are doing. Like they're taking your data transmission and like hijacking it. So stop that.
Yeah, I really don't want to get any more. I have a lot of unsubscribing to do after this research.
Yeah,
I've got a lot of unsubscribing to do. So I'm going to get to that. We'll probably do more of this stuff as time goes on. I think this is going to become a regular project at IndieX, probably something that we do once or twice a year. Just like I said, to keep on top of what's going on, keep sharp. Don't let our processes cloud our judgment of what's happening out there in the wild, but also just to know like what's not going on and what can be done to help people move to the next level.
Yeah. And also like, what does it take to be better? Like what does it take to outperform in across these dimensions?
For sure.
It's good to have that awareness. What's your competition doing?
Right. Exactly. So this was super fun. Thanks for grilling me on it, Cirque. I appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the numbers.
Yeah, dude, I thought it was super cool and interesting. And it also shows us like a little bit how things have shifted and evolved since we started, but not a whole lot of surprises.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope you guys dug this. I would be silly to not mention that if you're an artist that fits into the categories, or if you're a manager that works with artists that fits into some of the categories that we were talking about today, and you want to pull on those 3 levers that I was talking about that we do at IndieX, we'd love to hear from you. We'll leave a link to IndieX in the show notes. You can chat with us there. We'd love to hear more about what you're doing. But until next time, Indies, I've got some email inboxes to clear, some unsubscribing to do, and I probably need to shut my eyes and get them away from online stores and websites for a while.
Yeah, dude.
We'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.